Oh, I thank you. Oh, yay, you guys are up there. Thank you. You were out on the patio the last time I checked. Yeah, and then now we're here. That's right. Are we live already? We're already live. Excellent. Perfect. They can hear me? Excellent. Well, when you want to turn on the camera, I'm ready, I think. All right, hello friends and welcome, whether you're joining us online or in person. I know that there's some people still on the patio gathering, but as I shared with you, I have two places I need to be at the same time. So I'm going to welcome my friend Denyse and then pass it over to her and then head downstairs for our new member class. But first, we're going to pray. Let's pray. Awesome, Almighty God, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks for the opportunity to be in conversation, to learn about what has happened at General Conference and how that might embolden us to take that invitation to be sent in love in new and profound ways. Be with us this day as Denyse shares information with us, that we hear the news that she relays and then listen for how you might be stirring something in our hearts, individually and as a congregation, for how we might be present in the world, witnessing to your love. It is in your name that we pray. Amen. This is my friend Denyse Barnes. She is the Director of Justice and Compassion for our annual conference. Wanda is going to come in a second and probably try to steal a hug from you, just so you know. Okay. This is my friend Denyse Barnes. She is the Director of Justice and Compassion, as I said. I shared a little bit of this during worship, but I've known Denyse for maybe even 15 years now. 15 years. I've had the blessing of watching her journey from a layperson to going to seminary, to becoming a pastor, to getting her doctorate, to becoming the Director of Justice and Compassion, and serving our annual conference amazingly in a variety of different ways, from supporting our LGBT community to immigration rights to everything in between. So I'm going to pass it to you, Denyse, and I love you dearly. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And she's got a great accent.
Good morning. It's great to be with you here in person and to those people online. And I'm going to try and not talk for too long because I'd really like to know what your questions are in terms of what we happen. But a quick introduction. I went to General Conference as a reserve delegate that wasn't yet ratified, because when annual conferences vote for delegates, it has to be ratified by General Conference. So I became a seated delegate, or a possibility to be a seated delegate while we were at General Conference. So that was quite exciting. But I think what happened really was we went there with three goals, right? Which was regionalize, revise, and remove. They were the 3 R's that everybody was talking about. So I'm going to take each one individually so you understand what they mean. So the first one, and the biggest one, because it becomes a constitutional change for our church, is regionalization. What this means is that we would separate the church into regions. We'd still be a United Methodist church, but those regions would be allowed to have their own book of discipline, to make changes to the way things are done that are specific to the country and culture in which they are located. So no longer would white America be able to tell the people in the Philippines or the people in Africa what they can do and how they can do it. And back the other way, right? So now we would have more autonomy with our book of discipline, and it wouldn't be judged and decided on, and the way we organize wouldn't be decided on by people who don't live here and don't understand the way the culture is different to the way they're at. So that was a really big one and an important one. That passed. I mean, and when I say these things are passing, I don't know how much you know about General Conference in the past, but General Conference is a lot of legislation, and it's very well structured. The first week, the legislation is divided up into various committees. The committees discuss each piece of legislation that's been assigned to them, and decide whether or not it will go straight through, or it will be amended, or not passed at all. That all then goes on to a consent calendar if it doesn't require further discussion on the floor. And most of what we wanted and most of what we were voting for went through on consent calendar. It's unheard of that anything talking about changes to the Constitution, LGBT rights, what our social principles are, any of that stuff normally would be up for big debate and much argument and generally a lot of harm on the floor of the General Conference. Not this one. The votes went through on consent calendars that were passing at over 90% positive votes. It was such a different culture and time, and what was happening was just strange. I didn't go there expecting it, you know. I went there expecting that it was going to be harmful, that it was going to hurt me, that there was going to be argument. It didn't happen. It didn't happen at all. So we got the regionalization votes, that all happened, and I think it's important to know also that there was a lot of work that was done between 2019, when we had the special called General Conference, where they doubled down on charges and restrictions on LGBT people, to 2024, when we finally were able to gather again. In those 5 years, a lot of people did a lot of work to figure out how we could work together, how we could move forward as a more cohesive unit, understanding that what you want doesn't necessarily hurt me and what I want doesn't hurt you, and we can still be in fellowship and ministry and following the call of Jesus Christ together, regardless of those changes. So, for example, when the regionalization pieces were up, because they were most impactful to the people in our central conferences. Oh, okay.
I want the people online to hear you.
Oh, and I'm not loud enough.
Well, they'll only hear it on here.
Oh, okay. Sorry, people online. I hope this is better. So yeah, when the regionalization legislation was up for debate or discussion, it was the people in the central conferences who spoke on the floor. Nobody else. So people in the United States, delegates were not speaking for or against what was needed by those people in the central conferences so that they could have some autonomy. And similarly, when a lot of the LGBT stuff was up for discussion, it was queer people who took the microphones and everybody else stayed back. It was such a different culture and such a different feeling and understanding of working together so that we could remain together. So that was very powerful. So that was regionalization. Revise was our social principles. So they're not part of our book of discipline, but they are those things which guide us, which, tell us who we are as Methodists, what we believe in. So they contain things like creation care, use of fossil fuels, gambling, alcohol, who isn't a beloved child of God. All of that is in our revised social principles, and they haven't been changed in a very long time. So a team of people have been working on those for a number of years, and they're very different, they're very changed, they very much more reflect today's world and who we are called to be in today's world. The things that people are facing, for example, loneliness and isolation and all of the things that COVID brought us are much more highlighted in the new social principles, as well as support for LGBT people and the removal of that language. And once again, the social principles pretty much sailed through without any discussion on the floor, signed, sealed, and delivered and done. And then finally, the LGBT stuff was sorry, I still get emotional about it. Every single piece of legislation and every single piece of language that was harmful or restrictive or produced charges against LGBT clergy or people who marry LGBT people, all gone. Yeah, every single piece gone. And that's a beautiful thing. We still have a lot of work to do. We still have a long way to go. But there is now, do you know the term Wesley's 3 rules? Do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. We just hit do no harm, right? We still got a long way to go to do the do good and stay in love with God, but we did get to do no harm, and it was a beautiful thing and amazing to see. And I think people have asked me, what was your highlight moment? And I think, you know, for us queer clergy, General Conference has always been a time of pain and conflict and hurt. And we were all gathered together talking about how well it was all going and what did it feel like. And we were all feeling hopeful, but nobody wanted to say it, because if you say it, it's real, and then if it all goes wrong, it's a harder place to fall from. So that's where we were at, in our minds. And then one morning, after much of it had passed, so one of the final mornings, the band closing worship played Love Train. And for 10 minutes, there was love trains both sides of the bar, with people literally just dancing together and laughing. And I never in my life thought I would see that at a general conference. It was beautiful. It was really, really beautiful to see. So relationships were built on, people started to figure out who we are together. I mean, Rachel's sermon this morning was a perfect reflection of what actually happened when you try to do this in love and not in hatred because of your differences. So it was truly a beautiful thing. There was a lot more was passed. We got our, from CalPAC, our resolution which will demand an apology and restoration and work for Hawaii after the illegal overthrow and annexation of Hawaii. It was done by the United States, in which the United Methodist Church was complicit and active. And that passed at General Conference. So there will now be a committee set up that will help figure out what is that work and how do we do it and how do we really apologize in a meaningful way to Hawaii and make some kind of reparations. So, and there was a whole bunch more of legislation. Of course, I'm not going to list it all. We met for 2 weeks. But overall, it got us to a place of neutrality as far as LGBT people go, right? So we are no longer excluded. I actually got to vote to remove the language that said queer clergy were incompatible with Christian teaching. I actually got to vote on that, and that was a pretty powerful moment for me. But we haven't affirmed anything yet. We haven't said we love everybody, that all people are God's beloved children, and that we should be opening and accepting and welcome to everybody, and we should make special provision for certain marginalized groups, which include LGBT people in that, right? Because in society and culture, we are excluded, and there's all kinds of new legislation, particularly against trans and black trans women, that really suffer. So we haven't gone the other side of it, but we don't say bad things, and if your church and your pastor want to, you can do marriages now in your church of LGBT people, if they're going to come, if they're going to walk in the doors. And I think for me, that's what do we have to do next, is how do we tell LGBT people that we were wrong, and we're sorry, and we'd love you to be a part of our community, because that's a whole new thing, right? We're not going to stick a rainbow up outside and all the queers are going to say, oh, look, a rainbow, we can go in there, we're welcome. It's not going to happen. The benediction, which you sing, which I love this morning, obviously I'm not from around these parts, and I grew up in England with my roots very much in Celtic parts of the country, and that blessing that you sing is from Celtic Christianity. And when the Christians arrived and converted, they didn't really convert the Celts, they blended with the Celts, right? And a whole new kind of different Christianity expression was formed. They very much went out to where the people were. They didn't stay where they were in their communities, they went out. And that's what that song was written for. God be with you as you go and find these new people and spread the word of the good news out in the world. That was the song that was written to send people out. And that's what we're going to have to do, is go out to where the LGBT people are. And to the people that didn't come because of our stance, queer or not, right? There's people that weren't part of our churches just because of the stance we took. So we're going to have to find ways to meet them where they're at. And that's kind of different for a lot of churches who think that we're here, people can see us, they know we're here, if they want to come, they'll come. It's not going to happen. We're going to have to go where they're at. We're going to have a presence. We're going to have to do things like stand up at these school boards that are happening across the country, where they're trying to double down on allowing trans children to use the correct restroom, or banning books that have details of LGBT people in them. we're going to have to go and stand with these people and say, we're with you, we support you, we love you, because we have to rebuild that relationship, and that's one of the ways to do it, is to gain their trust. So I think that's all I would like to say from my point of view, but I would love to answer any questions you have or any follow-ups that you might want to know about. So please, questions. Don't be shy. Yeah.
Is there going to be, I mean, when I talk to millennials and Gen Xers, you know, they read in the news about how the Methodists really split and why, and yada, yada, yada. Is it going to be in the news, or are we going to be pushing, so saying, you're welcome now, we're sorry? I mean, is there going to be something out there from the Methodist Church that, I mean, it's not very newsworthy because it's not very exciting, but
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So that the youth that have left our church because of our stance against it, and these are just kids who have friends of color and LGBTQ and
Right.
whatever, and they said, I'm not coming to a church that hates.
Okay, so just for those people online, the question was, is there going to be a big news announcement from the global church that, yes, we are now welcoming and affirming of all LGBT people, because the kids out there that have left because of who we were and our stance need to know. And I think my answer is that's very unlikely that will happen.
This is my point. It's
Right.
It's great for those of us who go.
Yeah. Well, and my point is, in your context, where you are at, go find the people that it matters and tell them, right? Get your local newspapers to make information. Go to Pride Parades, have a booth, give out stickers or drinks or whatever. Make your presence known in the places where you haven't been, either because you knew what reception you were going to get, right? Because they knew where you were at. Or just because that's what we should be doing anyway. So go out in love to the places. I've got some, and I'm going to be building more on this. So number one is learn the language, right? The language is difficult. I'm old in all of this, and I just say queer because the whole alphabet soup, it just gets bigger every day, right? So, and queer works for me because it keeps part of who I am to myself, and I don't have to tell you who I sleep with. Because you don't tell me who you sleep with, so why should I tell you, right? So learn the language, and we're going to be offering, we have an LGBTQ strategy group, and we're going to be working out, I did some a few years ago, and we'll start doing them again, some workshops on what is the language, and where can you go to find out what the current language is, because it does change so often. So learn the information so you can speak the language of the people you're reaching out to. That's really important. And then we have a small group called Open Space, which is a gathering place for young adults, really, not youth, but young adults. And they tend to meet in bars or cafes, that kind of thing, and have a meal together and talk about where they've seen God moving in their lives that week. It's much less formal. There's some guided questions and things you can do, and they do service opportunities together. So we can help resource you in that way. That group also, we're exploring ways of getting involved in kind of having a GSA, but a church version of GSA, right? GSA is the Gay Straight Alliance in high schools. Why aren't we doing it in our churches, right? Because most kids of that age are affirming and open and have no hang-ups at all about it. So let's do that in our churches. Just have a youth group where they can come and they can all be, and it's not a thing, right? And we can provide space and refreshments and whatever to give them a safe place to hang out. So those are some of the things we're going to be offering to help you get out there. Ways to speak to school boards, how to be involved in Pride, who to speak to, how to find out what is local to you. And I think our biggest impact is going to be seen in our actions, right? It's exactly what Rachel said this morning. We have to show that we believe that what our church is doing and stands for is right, and here we are, and we're here what do you need from us? And just ask people, what do you need? Yeah.
To your point, I've seen news articles about this, and it's unclear if people are leaving because we love or because we hate in the news articles. And so I agree, we need to actually go out into the world and spread this message.
Thank you. Yeah. For those online, it was a reflection that a lot of the news articles that have been out there are pretty unclear about if we who have stayed in the United Methodist Church are affirming or non-affirming, you know, and I think that's a good point, and I will bring that up with our UN News and see if they can actually recraft some of it to reflect more fully where we're at. And certainly our conference, we have a new communications director in our conference who's amazing, so certainly we'll ask her if she can help spread that message in different ways. So thank you for that. Any others? Gosh, quite a bunch, huh? It's overwhelming, I think, now you know what we felt like being there. It was like, oh, this has happened. Oh, this has happened. It was, we had also made an agreement that if we passed the LGBT stuff, we would not have huge, great rainbow celebrations in front of everybody. Because some of the delegates were voting with us and against the rest of their delegation, and that was unsafe for many of them. So for us to be flaunting it, so we had agreed, yes, okay, so we had a space outside where we would go at the break after every piece of legislation that got passed or resolution that got passed that took away something that harmed us. We all had rainbow umbrellas and we were singing and dancing and that, and then we would come back inside and sober up and get ready for the next part. So it was kind of cool. There was a couple of times when it spilled because it was too big a thing, like when the incompatibility language went, you know, that was so huge. And the delegates, the people that were actually seated at the time, couldn't leave because there's a whole thing and security and time. So there was a few times when it did happen across the bar with the observers one side and the delegates the other, where we would celebrate together. But we were very much respectful of other people, and it was a very different feeling because of that. I mean, it was a nice feeling because of that. Yeah.
Are there helpful links that you could provide, like Rachel or something that she could pass on? You know, can you give us, you know, like here, some of the stuff you're doing, the communication that's going on, that would help us?
Sure. Yeah, so on our website, which is just about to be a new version of is about to be rolled out, but I'm responsible for a number of strategy groups that do this work. So I have an immigration strategy group, an abolition, a Holy Land, right? All of those different areas. And each one of them has a page on the conference website. That's just calpacumc.org. And you can go to those which will show you contact details of the people who are involved in that particular work, as well as details of any workshops we're doing or anything that is available. And that will include links and resources. So we have annual conferences this week, and then we have like 2 weeks off and it's jurisdictional conference. So I'm a little busy between that, but my plan is to get together some of these workshops so that we can start offering them either online, preferably in person, because they're much more powerful in person, to anybody that wants to start digging a bit deeper, learning the language, developing, like we have a resource document that we recommend churches get together, which is what are the local LGBT resources and where are they safe? For example, homeless shelters in Los Angeles are not LGBT friendly. So there are some that are just LGBT, right? So it's that kind of information about what you have here, where people can go, that you just have it available, ready, so that put it on your website so people know. It's a little thing, But all of those little things are what builds up to church, to people saying, oh, wait, they do care. They're showing they care because they've got all this available for us.
I think you're right in that we have work to do as a local community. I've always, through my own personal experience, I've always made the comment that my church family, my faith family, have never been particularly discriminatory to me as an openly gay man who's part of the church. I've had more discrimination from the LGBT community and my gay friends that I'm a Christian than I have from my Christian community that I'm gay. So I think now, and it's always been kind of a balance, a tipping point on the scale to walk that fine line, because I couldn't be an advocate and an evangelist to go out into that community and say, no, our church loves you, come and be part of the church. I've always experienced love in this church and you know, in my Christian faith. Maybe I'm lucky because Calpac is a completely different animal than the rest of the World Methodist Church. But it's always been a tricky situation to bring in people to the church. So now I think that's the bridge that we need to be on, is out there and saying, you know, we're not what you read in the media or the experience you've had. And people don't understand United Methodist Church. People understand Christianity or even broader religion. They
Right.
go, oh, I don't want to go to church. Oh, I don't have religion because it's a bunch of, you know, racist bigots and homophobes and things like that. And, you know, and I've never had that experience, so I can be an evangelist and go out and tell people and talk to people about my faith journey. It's just a shame Pride Month is almost halfway over now, because I love the idea of being out in the parades and giving out Methodist Church things, pamphlets that say you're welcome and we love you.
Right.
So next year we'll have to plan early.
Keep your eye out, because some hot places have Pride at different times of year. Like, I go to Hawaii Pride every year, and that's in October. And down on the border, Calexico, El Centro, their Pride is also in October. San Diego's is, I think, in July. So I don't know what it is if you have your own local one here. But keep your eye out for those kind of things. And you know what? If there isn't one later in the year, make one up. Right? Create one. Yeah.
I want to say as well, following on a little bit from what Josh is saying, just, you know, he's saying get out into our community to tell people. So I'm on like a couple of different Facebook groups, and you spoke about the schools, and there's a vibe in Santa Clarita, maybe it's in other places as well, that certain people with roles that are in education are very anti-LGBT+,
Yes.
very anti, like strongly.
Yes.
And so I'm in the group because I'm supportive, but then you see things like Christians, they put us all in a box and say Christians like don't like,
Right.
but it's because there's other groups of Christianity that really hate, like, and I mean hate, like, we've got a local Baptist guy now who he says like threatening things.
Yeah.
When you see that the community, they're hearing from Christian groups how much that they hate.
Exactly.
That's not how everybody is, but that's what a lot of them are perceiving.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like a big barrier to get across. That not every Christian hates.
Right.
Yeah, work that much harder.
It's a lot of work we have to do, I agree. And that's where we need our allies, because we can't do all of this ourselves. We need people to do it with us and to stand up for us when we're tired, when we've been the subject of that hate, right? We need that support. So, you know, being an ally is a verb. It's not a noun, it's a verb. It means go out and do something and be supportive of. So we really need straight people to step up and help us do that. The schools thing is hard. I've been to many of these school districts and stood up on behalf of church members who have asked me to be there to push back against all of this. I think what's positive is that 2 of those people have now been, I'm not in Santa Clarita, I don't think, but 2 of the ones that I've been at have actually already been voted off because they've been so extreme. So there is being pushed back here in California, at least. But yeah, we have a hard battle to go. The hate has been strong. We haven't had a message that means LGBT people are even interested in it. But let me tell you something. When I was at Hollywood, as associate pastor, I took over a ministry that had been started by the previous associate called Spirit Pub, where we met in a gay bar in WeHo. At its height, I had 40 people coming every week. And all we did was have a drink, have a meal, and talk about where God is moving in. Where have you seen God this week? Right? Or what are your concerns and celebrations? Real simple stuff. That was church. 100% that was church right there. And so there's two things from that. People need it and they want it, so we have to find out how to give it to them. And number two, church isn't only here in this building. And we have to stop thinking that, oh, we've only got 50 people in worship, we're failing. There are many, many more ways to engage people that aren't in this building. And your actions and the way that you're loving and including and working with those people is what shows them what Christianity and following Jesus is really about, right? Without the hate. So it's not going to happen overnight. We have a lot of work to do. But I'm going to come up with a whole bunch of resources that will help you figure out where do we go and how do we start those conversations, because that's hard. Now, I have an advantage over all of you. Well, not over you, because you have the accent too. But I have purple hair. People come and talk to me because I got purple hair. And when I say, well, what do you do? I'm a pastor. They're like, no, I'd come to your church. Right? So because we don't look the way they perceive Christians to look, or pastors to look, it's a way of opening a conversation. And I think it's finding that commonality, that love of purple or a liking of a tattoo. We're doing some work with a gentleman called Damien Gedry, who was a marketer who walked in. His claim to fame is that he's the only person who ever walked in off the street to Claremont School of Theology. But his project is he's going out, and whoever he meets, he asks them if he can ask them a few questions. And he asks them, what are you looking for? And what is your greatest hope in the world? And these people, from young people to octogenarians, talking about suffering. They talk about a need for something and community, loneliness and isolation. That's across the board. And COVID made it worse, of course. We can provide those things, right? We can provide help for being in community, for an answer to suffering. We have the answer, right? That in our faith to suffering and what that means and where to find hope. We have all of that. We just have to find a way of putting it in the language of those people that we want to join us. And that's it. We've got to learn new languages. Yeah.
There's a lot of people disaffiliating, and like, while I understand, it also breaks my heart because they're our family too.
100%, yes. And, you know, we're in Calpac, are fortunate in that we only had 3 churches disaffiliate. There's more that want to, but disaffiliating is not easy. And I think it's about learning to be with people who don't think the same as us. And to seeing, you know, there's a branch of, my wife is Jewish, so I learn a lot of Jewish things. And there's a branch of Jewish mysticism which believes that ahead of every person goes an angel who is introducing that person as a beloved child of God to other people they meet, right? That goes for everybody, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. And I think if we can help each other learn those ways of being together, I have this dream of a church that is built on things like doing jigsaw puzzles, or crocheting or book clubs, or, you know, so you have something that you share that is nothing to do with faith or organized religion or a particular brand of religion, so Christianity, Judaism, any of it, but is built over a commonality, right? A shared interest. Because I think if you can start from that point, you just grow from it. And I truly believe that once you see someone as a beloved child of God, it's impossible to hate them. When I first answered my call, I was a member of a pastor in Ojai, a member of a church in Ojai, and I was answering my call to ministry, and I preached for the first time. Now, I was a member of that church. I was also the choir director, the bell choir, no, a member of the choir, the bell choir director. I volunteered in the office. You know, I was answering my call. So I knew everybody. It's a small community. When I stood up to preach the very first time, a group of 3 ladies at the back got up and left. I don't know if it's my British stubbornness or what it was, but I was like, all right, you can not like me for my personality, but you can't hate me for something you don't understand, right? So I made them my mission. Every single church event, I sat at their table. Every single social thing, I was there. When I heard one got a new puppy, I went to the house with some dog biscuits and a toy. When someone's daughter died, I was the first one there with flowers and a card and offering sympathy. They must have got so sick of me. But I wouldn't give up because I wanted them to know me, who I was, and what my expression of my faith was. 8 months later, no, maybe a year and 8 months later, I was appointed to Hollywood. So it was a big move for me. So I took out a little group of ladies for lunch and told them I was leaving because that's the best way to get it out, right, to the whole church. Before I got home, my phone rang, and it was one of those 3 ladies who had walked out telling me she was so upset that I was going and that she was going to miss me. It's about relationship. It's about knowing someone. And so if we can move away from the things that which we disagree about and bond over the things which I believe we all have in common, other than the fact we're all beloved children of God, right? We have other things in common, other interests, then I think that's a way to start building. I really do. Well, I'm sure as soon as I leave or you go home, you're going to think of 100 things that you wanted to ask and didn't. Try and watch some of annual conference this week. There'll be some videos and stuff explaining more technically what's happened and also looking at ways we're going to move from here, because last year our theme of our conference was Nourish. This year we're moving into Flourish. So how can we help people flourish? How can we help our church communities flourish? How can we help our buildings flourish? And how can we help the people outside our walls to flourish? So a lot of that will be covered during annual conference. Rachel will have all that information. She has my details too. More than happy for you to reach out. If there's something I said that you thought, oh great, we should do that, or if you want to know about workshops or that kind of thing, then I'm more than happy for you to reach out to me. We're in this together, let's do it together. Thank you. Thank you online.